Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Financial Security for All Community of Practice webinar. We're so excited to have Naomi Bechtold with us today. Some of you who, if you were at NEAFCS, you may have seen her session about Captain Cash. It kind of fills that gap that we're sometimes looking for with materials to use with elementary school age children. And she's been doing this program for several years now, so she has quite a few years of proven success with the Captain Cash program. She's here to tell us all about that today. We'll have the Q&A open, so you're welcome to put your questions there, and we'll be sure to circle back around to them. We also have the chat open for you today. We'll have a few engagement opportunities, and we're going to kick it off with a poll. So if you could take just a second to let us know, are you conducting financial education for elementary school age students? And your choices there are not at all, occasionally, frequently, or I have in the past, but not currently, or not yet, but I'm interested. So if you just take a second to respond to that. And are we seeing poll results? Okay, not yet, but I'm interested for 41%, and then occasionally. Well, with these great materials we have that we're going to talk about today, Captain Cash, I think more of us may have the opportunity to do that. So I'll turn it over to Naomi.
Thanks so much, Laura, and Andrea and Megan as well for inviting me today. I was bummed that I couldn't participate in the poll as a panelist because I would have put frequently. In fact, for many years, as Laura had said, I've been doing either teaching or helping mentor other Indiana Extension educators as they present Captain Cash. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. It's not showing up as green. Is it, can someone tell me, you can see it? Okay, that's interesting that I can't see the green line showing the fact that I'm screen sharing. So with Captain Cash, the first thing that you'll see here is if you have not used it in the past, you may or may not have been, you may be familiar with an app called Kahoot, which is it's an application, and actually it's not just used for elementary school kids. I know that there are classes at Purdue where the instructors use Kahoot as well. And it's one of those apps that's sort of like edutainment. It gives you a chance to, in this case, to assess learning, but also in a very fun format. And so I have put together a Kahoot game to play towards the end. And so the first 10 people who can get into the game when we get to that point, you'll be able to play along as well. And that also obviously will be dependent upon time that we have. So today with Captain Cash, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit about Captain Cash's history. I'm going to give you an overview of the current program and then our plans to take it national. So, all right, this doesn't want to advance. So here we go. So when was the maiden voyage of Captain Cash? And the answer is we actually first set sail back in 2010. And that was, I think that I had just started with Purdue Extension probably a couple years prior. So I was part of the pilot team for this. And I did it as a 4-H educator. And you'll see this, what you're looking at right now is the front cover of the old front cover of the educator notebook that contained all the materials. And you'll see that there's a 4-H clover in there because this program was created as a partnership with 4-H, and it still is. We have many 4-H educators or agents, as other states may call them, who actually teach Captain Cash as well. So it's not just consumer and family sciences educators, health and human sciences educators. We actually have some ag educators as well who teach this program. It's really that easy that you don't need to have a financial background in order to be able to do that, to be able to, and it's just, as you will find out, a lot of fun. So people ask whether or not it's won any awards. Early on, with the old edition of I mean, probably within the first 2 years that it was offered, we did actually offer it for sale nationally, and I believe that we did get also a national reward for it at the time. But this is a long time ago, and so since then we have just kept, when it's come to applying for awards, it's just been within the state. But we received within the last 5 years a couple really good rewards. One was the College of Ag's pre-K through 12 Outreach and Engagement Award, where we receive $5,000, which helps to sort of pay for our Captain Cash shirts that we've got here, amongst other things as well. And then we also have a specialist association that gave us an award for the program too. So, like with the old program, I mean, some things have, for those of you who are familiar with it, I mean, there are obviously, you'll see things that have changed, but there are some items of the curriculum that have never changed. One being that it is 4 enrichment sessions, always has been, always will be. And each session is a trip to a different money management island. The curriculum is focused on 3rd grade students. We have done it with 4th, actually with some 5th, and with 2nd graders as well. But within the state of Indiana, this is an IRB protocol program. And so we have to focus, we have chosen to focus entirely on 3rd graders. And that's where all of our impact comes from, is 3rd grade students. You all might decide to do it differently. And then each lesson includes lots of interactive activities. And there's also a take-home newsletters for parents and for guardians. So the left-hand side is the old Captain Cash, which was actually drawn by I mean, we did this program on a penny, not even a dime. And so it was drawn by one of the children of one of the educators on the team. On the right-hand side is our new Captain Cash, who was done professionally by one of our ag educator graphic artists. And I think he did an amazing job. So as part of the update, we reviewed the entire curriculum. We did updates of the program's presentations, and now what we'll do is we'll show you the results. So the first, one of the biggest changes that we made is to our map. So as part of each session, our educators go in with a map, and that's what it looks like there. This is the actual map itself that you can see. It looks just like the map that you see on your screen. And you'll see what it does. It takes you, go to 4 different islands, and those are the islands of earn, save, spend, and borrow. And so you go to 1 different island every week. As part of the update, we've also updated promotional materials, such as these we call our rack cards. And here's the biggest change, is not only do we have a male Captain Cash, we now have a female Captain Cash as well. And that was huge. When we were going through the determining what we wanted to do for an illustration for the male and the female Captain Cash, I'm like, I don't know, which one should we take? Should we choose? And somebody said, why don't we have them both? I'm like, brilliant. So we do. And I'll tell you, even just in the last year, we have updated these materials. And like during the summer, the last couple summers, we have participated in the Indiana State Fair promoting Captain Cash, where we have the kids actually go to those 4 islands. And at the end, they have an opportunity to either get a little male Captain Cash sticker or a female. And not surprisingly, the little girls went the female and the little boys went the male. So we thought it really important for girls to be able to see themselves in leadership capacities. And so we have both of them. And what you'll see is throughout the lessons is that one lesson features the male Captain Cash. The second lesson will feature the female, back and forth. So we don't, we make sure that we equally represent them as well. So we have those Captain Cash rack cards, as we call, for promoting. Then we also have the Captain Cash hat here, and which we all wear into the schools or into the camps. And what you might not be able to see is the fact is that a lot of us actually put real dollar bills into the bill of the captain's hat. And I'll tell you, if you want something that's going to get kids' attention, it's going to be the dollar bill, because they all want to know if it's real, and then they all want to know whether or not they can have it. The answer is no. So the captain hat, and we will tell you where it is you can get these items towards the end. And then we also have the dollar bill necklace, which is optional. You don't have to buy this. But as I was saying to Laura before we started today, the branding of this program is so important because it really differentiates you from anybody else who may be coming into that school for any other program or into that camp or into that Boys and Girls Club. They know you and they know who you are as soon as you walk in with that hat and with the necklace on. And they get to know you so well that I've got many educators who've told me that they'll be in their local grocery store not wearing their bling, and they will still have kids who they'll say, Mom, Dad, that's Captain Cash. So it makes a huge difference. And so we highly recommend that you get the items, the hat and the necklace too. One of the other important components when we decided to take this nationally is that we thought that other states would like to be able to have the opportunity to co-brand the materials. And we agree. I mean, we've certainly gotten materials from other states as well. It's great to be able to, in our case, have the Purdue Extension logo on there whenever we can. So just as an example, what we thought is that maybe this would be the place in this promotional material that you'd want to put your school's name, your organization's name as well. So when it comes to co-branding, what will happen is that any materials that are outward facing, in other words, promotional materials, forms or interactive activities that the kids can bring home, the newsletters, those will have spaces that you can put your organization's logo on there. The only place you will not be able to co-brand will be the curriculum itself, but that's nothing that goes out to the public anyway. That's something that you'll keep yourselves. So those just examples of co-branding that you could do. Now, so Laura also brought up as far as impact goes. It is really pretty incredible the outreach that we have had with this program over even the last, I think we started counting, doing impact a dozen years ago, maybe not that many. But since 2010, we've had over 27,000 students who've participated in Captain Cash, which is just incredible. Last year alone, we had almost 7,500 students from 61 of 93 Indiana counties that are taking Captain Cash. It's really now taking on sort of its own. I mean, it's off on its own now. There have been enough people who've heard about it and have heard how well that it's doing that we have to do very little promoting of it. People are coming to us, which is just awesome. And then also, I mean, Captain Cash this past year alone was taught in 123 schools and other community organizations. And if you want, I can certainly send to Laura and her colleagues copies of our impact statements so you can see the kinds of places that we're offering Captain Cash. But I really can't be prouder of the kind of outreach and impact that we've had. And I'll come back to that in a second. I don't know if you see the little asterisk here after teachers, but as part of the getting this ready for national sale, we asked an internal faculty member who teaches consumer and family sciences, and then an external expert. We asked Dr. Jenny Abel from University of Wisconsin if she'd be able to review the materials, and for both of them to give us their feedback. And then I asked, and Jenny had such a nice thing to say. I asked if she'd mind that I share it with you all, and she said, "No, go ahead." But one of her comments when she sent back the review form was, "This is a great curriculum. Can't wait to suggest it to the educators in my state." It was like, oh, I love that. So that's about the expert reviewer. One of the other components of Captain Cash is, besides the interactive activities, is we have books, at least one book that goes along with each lesson. So we can increase the reading level or reading comprehension, and all the books have a financial focus. When we did the update, one of our update team, she actually she found a list of over 500 books that had a theme of either economics or money and finance. and an interest level of K through 5. Then the update team got together and broke it down. We whittled it down to 63 books. And we looked at these books and asked a couple of these questions to ourselves, such as, is the book visually appealing? Is it diverse? Are there discussion questions in the books? Does it come in Spanish? And what category does it fall in? Because it needed to either be earning, saving, spending, or borrowing. And so these are the books, and these are actually the books that were the original books before we updated. And after all that, we decided, let's stick with them because they checked all the boxes. The only book that I could not find in Spanish was Less Than Zero. And actually, I did find a copy of it in Spanish, but I had to have purchased it overseas and it would have cost me $75, and I didn't feel that was going to work too well. And so each of these books also have discussion questions that can go along with the book as it is read to the class. And then we also added the CFPB's Money Monsters books. And if you all aren't familiar with the consumer, well, I'm sure you're familiar with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but we have added this QR code to our newsletters so parents and guardians can download and or have shipped to them these free books that also have a financial focus as well. On top of that, we have fun incentives for the students. So we have dollar bills and we have $5 bills, and the $5 bill has the male Captain Cash. We have bookmarks, both male and female Captain Cash. And my personal favorite is this certificate of completion. So the incentives are, for example, if somebody answers a question, but let me tell you, you're never going to have problems having people wanting to participate in this program. But still, it's something like our Admiral, Lori Buslog, she'll give the students dollar bills based upon answers. And then the teachers actually have incentives that they give to the students. So it's just, it's up to what it is you all decide to do. But this certificate of completion is full size. And we ask the teachers for the names of the students before we get to the last class. The educators have their admins go in and type the names of the students on those forms. And then either the educator or the teacher gives that completion certificate to each student once the program is over. Great way for the students to be able to get recognized for the participation that they've learned. And these items, since they are forward-facing, could also be co-branded. Then in the good old 4-H model of teach the students and then turn around and they teach, and we also get an opportunity to teach the parents as well, we have newsletters for each lesson. So this is the front of one of the newsletters. This is actually for lesson 1. And each newsletter on the front of it gives a quick synopsis of what was taught that day. And let's see if it shows here as well. And those documents are Word docs because it also then gives the educator to put in their personal information before it goes out. There's always a money fact and then some kind of family activities as well. And then the back side of it is a word search. And depending on the amount of time you've got in the classroom, you'll see that what you're seeing here is actually the master copy. So as educators, you know where all the words are, but on the newsletter, it's all black font, colored fonts. And this is an opportunity when you're done with the lesson for the day, you can sort of add this on depending on the time, but the time the teacher has. It's an additional learning opportunity because they can do this with friends, they can do it by themselves, but it's more of an opportunity for you to teach as far as vocabulary. Like what kids do you think is the word and what does profit mean? So it gives them a greater opportunity to learn more just in a very fun kind of setting. And they love the word search. So now let's move on to the lessons themselves. Remember, as I said, there are four different lessons. The first island that you will set sail to, and by the way, the curriculum has scripts. So not that you'll want to read the script, but at least, especially the first couple times you go through it, you're going to want to follow the script pretty closely. And it says within the script, good morning class, good afternoon class, who you are, what you're going to do. You're going on a money voyage, and you'll always have the map, and you'll put the map up like on the whiteboard behind you, and you say, okay, our first week, look where we're going. We're going to the island of Earn. That's interesting. And wait, we find something on this island. What do we find? And we've got a message in a bottle. And notice this is a really lousy looking plastic bottle, and I do have at least one educator who uses glass on glass bottles when she does this, but I don't trust myself enough. So I have a plastic bottle, and you ask the students to pull out there's a message in there, and the message is what you see on the screen. And it's weird. It's missing a word. The more you use something, the more you earn. It's missing a word. What word do you think is missing? And so we asked the class, in this kind of time, since I can't see the chat, I really can't ask you all to try to fill in the word, but if you want to, and for Laura to be able to see, and her colleagues, that's great. And we give them a chance in which to be able to talk about it. And then we say, well, let's move on. So you as an educator will certainly have that information as far as the word. And remember, this is the island of earning. And so, but it's not just about how it is you earn. So what we do in each lesson, from an educator standpoint, there's always a page in the curriculum that says what the learning objectives are. So you as an educator can tell this to the teacher in advance or to the students. And so since this is a lesson about learning and earning, the learning objectives for the students are that they're going to gain knowledge and basic earning concepts, such as ways in which to receive income or money, to recognize that learning increases earnings, and to explore jobs, including those career educational requirements and the anticipated earnings. So that's what it is that is the whole point behind this lesson. So I'm going to show you some of the activities that go along with each of these lessons. So this is a big one. This is one of the first activities that you'll do, and it carries throughout the entire 4 sessions. Well, it carries out again in lesson 3. But what we have are 6 different careers. And in this lesson, these are full-size pictures of different kinds of careers, anything from being a cashier to being a vet. And we have separate cards that show the month just has the amount of the monthly income, and then separate cards like note cards that show the kind of educational requirements. And we put them up on the whiteboard behind us, and then we say, and we mix it all up, and then we say, okay, let's figure out what job goes with what earnings goes with which education requirements. And it's always really interesting to see what ends up coming up. As far as, because depending on the class, they're going to have much different types of ideas of what job earns the most and what job requires the most and the least education. And so we are also very conscious about the fact that there are certainly going to be kids in that classroom whose parents or guardians are cashiers. And so we are never derogatory towards any of the careers, but we do point out the fact that the longer that you stay in school, the more income you actually have, you have the opportunity in which to be able to make. And that's really the lesson that comes from that one. Then a second activity that we have is an illustrated story where we have Terry and Chris. And this is a story that you as an educator read to your students, and you talk about first talk about Terry, about he just hates school, he doesn't like to do his homework, he just wants to watch TV, and he just wants to get through it. And then there's Chris, who also has a tough time with school, but man, he works through it. He does all of his homework, he gets it done on time, it's always a priority. And then we ask the kids, so who do you think is going to earn more? And we have a discussion on it. But the key question there is it too late for Terry to be able to change his ways so we can learn more, so we can earn more? And the answer is, of course, it's not too late. So that's an important illustrated story. Just a couple of activities. Then we move on to the second next week or the next day, depending on how it is you choose to set it up. And usually we recommend once a week for 4 weeks. But anyway, you move to the island of save. And there's another message in the bottle. And by now, you've got half the class who's wanting to get that message in the bottle out and to read it to the rest of the class. And so you ask the teacher to be able to help to choose. And so that way, then you're not choosing the same person, and you're also keeping the teacher engaged, and that's really important. So here's the message in the bottle. Every something save some cash away. What is that word? What does it, I mean, what could be missing? And this being the island of saving. So what we're saying, the word that's missing, I'm going to tell you all, is every payday. You save some cash away, but you never say that until the very end of the lesson. You go back and say, so what was the word? And the more that you, what? The more you earn? Oh, the more you learn. Exactly. Okay. So lesson 2, the learning objective is to have the students gain some basic knowledge in savings concepts. And they'll learn about safe places to save their money, the importance of saving money, and the value of setting a saving goal. You know, these are things that for those of us who are FRM educators or specialists, we teach this to adults too, because they haven't learned it. And so it's great that they're learning it early here. So one of the activities for is too good to be true. And you have 2 students, Mia and her brother, Matthew. And Mia is a spender and Matthew is a saver. And the story is that their grandmother said that she's gonna take them to an amusement park where they can go and they can buy things. Well, Mia, turns out she gets to the amusement park, can't buy anything because she's spent all her money already, where Matthew comes back with a boatload of stuff. And so after the story, you ask some reflection questions, and it helps them to get an idea of that. We ask the students, and we're not asking them to answer, do you see yourself more as a Mia or as a Matthew? But is it ever too late in which to become more of a saver? One of the other activities for lesson 2 is the savings versus spending activity. And there's a scenario where what we usually do is break the class into two groups. They both earn the same amount of money. You do this on the whiteboard behind you, or you have a flip chart where you've had it pre-set up. So they're getting math as part of this as well. And they're getting the visual learning of seeing as you're putting in those figures. You tell them what their expenses are. And then here's the difference in the scenario is that one group spends their money on entertainment while the other group has saved their money and they have $80. And guess what? They have found out the fact that they have to spend their money on a blown bicycle tire. Which group has got the money in which to be able to spend to be able to get that tire? So the importance of spending. And I mean, they find out how much money they've had in 8 weeks, and then we talk about and then we talk about why that's an advantage. And then we actually have this savings poster. And after they complete that activity, and this can be pre-printed, or I mean, you could just put it on poster paper. But anyway, you have the students all recite together. Here are some savings rules for you. Save before you spend, make saving a habit, and set a savings goal. What's a savings goal? Well, let's talk about that. But let's remember these because it's really, really important. And we talk about how it is you can put it on a poster. And then my savings goal is this paper goes out to each student, and it's basically a chance for them, instead of with adults where we have them write down their savings goal, I want to get a trip to Hawaii. We ask the students to draw a picture of something that they'd like to save for. It's a visual, and we tell them that we make sure that you're saving for something that's realistic. Like at the age of 3rd grade, you're really not looking for a well, you could be looking for a Lamborghini, but really what would be a realistic savings goal for you? And we have them fill that out, and then they can bring that home to show to their to the adults at their home, and they can put it up on the refrigerator so mom or dad or grandparents can say, remember you said you wanted to save for that new pair of Nikes. So let's do that. Now let's move to lesson 3. Lesson 3 is the island of spend. And here's the message in the bottle. There is a something to what you can spend. So when we do our lessons, every subsequent lesson, we always go back and go through the messages in the bottle from the previous lesson. So what was the message from lesson 1? Oh yeah, the more you learn, the more you earn. Right. So what does that mean? You stay in school. Lesson 2, every payday, and they've learned what payday is. So it can mean if you get an allowance when you get your allowance. It can mean if someone gives you a gift of money, if you don't get a regular allowance. But anyway, we help to reinforce those lessons. And then we get to the island of spend, which is always the kids' favorite lesson. They love the island of spending because they like to spend. So we all do. So in this lesson, the learning objectives are that students gain knowledge of basic spending concepts, including spending is limited by income and available money. When you tell that to kids, they'll sort of look at you like, what does that mean? Well, you can only spend what you've got. Identify needs and wants. They develop a spending plan. And then we assess their learning by playing the spending game. So there's a lot of fun things that happen here. So lesson 3 activities. First, this need or want activity. This you could the way that you see it there is just as a form where each kid can go and then choose what are their needs or versus, what they think are needs versus wants. And then you go over it as a group and as a class, who thinks that a cell phone is a need or a want type of thing. Or you can also just take those pictures. We've got them set up so they're just big pictures and you can just show them up to the group and one at a time. So a video game, need or want. Of course, you're going to have at least half the class say that a video game is a need. So, but it sparks discussion and that's good. So need or want. Then we have another activity, which is saving for a class trip versus spending on roller skating and pizza. And as it says here, it's a story about choices and how to save and spend money, because the character and when we talk about these stories, they're not more than a couple paragraphs long. The youth had the option to save for a class trip or spend money to go out to eat and roller skating with friends. And it's really interesting to see how the kids respond to this, because they get very creative in how it is they could do both. So once again, we make sure that we're not judgmental. We praise them for their creativity. We try to direct them on why it is that it's so important to be able to save. And then we have them create a spending savings plan. So coming back to lesson 1, where it is that you had the job, the income, and the education. Remember when I showed you that slide, it had all 3, like above the career for the cashier would say what the education requirements, how much they would make on a monthly basis, and then a picture of the cashier. For this activity, all 3 of that information is all on one card. And depending on the class and the time, you could break the class in 2 up to 6. And they choose without looking. They choose which one, their career that they've got. And then there's categories, and they've got a sheet that has this is your income, these are your various expenses. So there's housing, there's savings, there's food, there's cars, there's clothes, unexpected expenses, and other wants. And basically they choose from those cards, and then they have to put in what the total of the cost is for each of those expensive, and they just then subtract it from their income, and they see if they've got enough money in which to be able to live based on that career and based on the kind of living. And that sparks conversation as, okay, so you ended up you spent the most money on rent as possible. Are there other ways that you could cut back on rent maybe? Or your food expenses are really high. Are there other things you could do? Same activity that we do with adults, but just from a kid's perspective. And they get a chance to see the fact that it's not all about the money, but it is about the money, but how it is that you spend that money. And then finally, we get to the island of borrow. And when we get to that island, we point out to them that, oh my goodness, there's a skull and crossbones on that island. What does that mean? And we give the kid the chance to be able to say, oh, that means danger. Sometimes kids will say it means death. And we'll say, well, we don't know that it means death. However, it means that you got to be really careful. So why is it that with the island of borrow that you got to be careful? So the message in the model, the message in the bottle, be for a safer tomorrow, be wise when you borrow. And actually, I just realized that we've got that backwards because really the word safer should be the one that is blank. And so I'll have to fix that. But anyway, in the curriculum, it's fixed. It's just here that it isn't. So highlights of lesson 4. Now, I wanted to point out to you that you'll see it says activity optional. So in each of the lessons, there are activities that are listed as optional, which is just what it means. You do not have to do that activity. If it doesn't say optional, yes, that activity is an essential part of that lesson. But if it says optional, then you can sort of see how much time you've got. But people usually end up doing the optional activities because they're fun. They're good lessons. So in this lesson, the learning objectives are that they learn that borrowed money must be paid back, that there is a cost to borrowing money. And then this is a really tough concept for kids. And so we try to make it as easy as possible. But the concept being that repaying borrowed money reduces future money that is available to spend. What does that mean? Well, if you're paying back from the money that you loan, that somebody loaned you, you can't use that to go to the movies. But that's a really tough concept. So just keep that in mind. So we have Tina's story. And there's Tina. She owes her parents money. She gets a job, and then she begins shopping before she gets paid. And so what happens? And because she finds that she really wants these designer sunglasses, and so what happens when she ends up buying them and not being able to pay back her parents like she thought she was going to be able to? So you've got that activity in which, and once again, it's another math activity that you can do up on the whiteboard, on a projector, or on a flip chart. We also have another optional activity where they can learn the difference between credit cards and debit cards. And we just talk a little the basics as far as, well, for both of them, you should use them carefully. But that sometimes with credit cards, there's an extra fee just for having it, how it is that you can pay it back, but then you'll be paying interest, what a debit card is. And then we get to the grand summary of all 4 lessons, and it is Jeopardy. And it's a chance, as you can see here, that the kids have a chance to revisit the 4 lessons, the highlights, the learning concepts we really wanted them to learn, and to supposedly get a chance to earn big money. And you can do this as 2 classes. You could just 2 groups of a class, or just 2 people. And there's 2 ways you can do Jeopardy. One is you could have a permanent poster board, and as you see here, that has it has all the answers. And then what you do is you can cover them up like with Post-it notes and take them off one at a time, and then somebody keeps score. Or we also have an online version. We have a PowerPoint version, which is fun. Or you can play Kahoot. Okay, so how can you bring Captain Cash to your state? So here's the bottom line. The cost for all these materials is $350. The wonderful aspect of this is that once somebody in your state spends that $350, they can share it with anybody else within their own state at no additional charge. The only thing that person, if I share it with a colleague in another county, that person has to go and sign the agreement saying that you have to sign when you actually purchase it, saying that you will not share it out of your own state. But it isn't just like from one colleague in a university to another. If you have a community organization that you think would love to be able to offer it themselves, you can give it to them. They have to do the same thing. They have to sign the agreement saying they won't share it outside the state. But we want to be able to have this in as many hands as possible. Program files will be available in the cloud for download when purchased. And I'll come back to, and I'll just say here as well, you're able to create your own statewide impact statements because there are pre and post surveys. The most important survey, as far as I'm concerned, is the 8 to 12 week follow-up survey that you give to, that you tell teachers when you first sign up that you're going to present the class. And then before you leave at the end of the last class, you say, don't forget, I'm going to send you a link in 8 weeks to follow up, because this is where it is that you will see, with the questions that we ask the teachers, the behavior change in the students. And as you would see from our impact statements, I always have a couple testimonials in there that say, our kids are now talking about wanting to go to vocational school after they finish high school. Our kids are now talking about how it is they're saving money. So you actually see the behavior change, and that is the most gratifying part for us, is seeing the fact this really does make a difference. And then we also have a sheet that will have the resource examples. As I mentioned, like the captain's hat, you can get a Party City, dollar bill necklace, and an Oriental trading. The map, I told you it's expensive, but you get the file, so you could bring it somewhere else to get it printed if you wished. And then all the books have those ISBN numbers to make it easy to be able to order. Most of them you can actually get either on Scholastic or Amazon, and they cost between $10 and $12 a piece. Little pro tip here, the books are a great time and opportunity to be able to partner with your local bank or credit union to be able to co-brand those books. Put it like, say, you give us $250, we'll buy those books and we'll put your label on there and our label on there, so the kids see it and the school gets to have it. So up to you on how it is you choose to do it, but we found it's a great way to be able to partner. So if you're interested in purchasing Captain Cash, if you wouldn't mind scanning this QR code, what is going to happen is that all that does is it takes you to a Qualtrics where you put in your basic contact information. Hope is mid-November that this will go live. There's two things they're waiting for. One is the graphic artist right now is working on finding the space to co-brand those for outward-facing forms. And then second, our education store, which is where it is that the program will be purchased from, they're actually undergoing a complete design that hopefully they say it's going to go live the end of this month. And in which case, once that goes live, they have a couple weeks in which to be able to work out the kinks. Then we should hopefully have our materials ready for sale as well. And last but not least, questions for now or questions for the future, there's my email. You'll also see we've got our Admiral Lori Booslog's name on there as well, because as of March 1 of next year, I will be retiring and Lori will be taking over as the manager of the administrative manager of Captain Cash. And though I've already started onboarding her, and she's been doing this, as I said earlier, program so long that really all it is just the administrative background. So I'll go back to this QR code. And do we have questions? And I'm going I see a couple questions in the chat. Let's see. Oh, okay, Andrew, you put that in there. Thank you. Thanks for putting that contact information.
So Naomi, we have Maddie said she hopped on late and she was asking what grade level this is for.
Great question. And the answer is 3rd grade. And we have done it with both 4th grade and with 2nd grade. I have one educator who does it frequently with 2nd graders, like a couple hundred at a time. We cannot add them into our impact statements because that's not part of our IRB protocol. But she says the program works great for them. I think it's going to depend entirely on your audience, but this is definitely geared towards 3rd graders.
Thanks, Naomi. Another question in the Q&A, does the initial $350 include any books or map?
Great question. The answer is no. It is the files only. The map, though, that includes the file for the map. So I have an educator who took that file to their local FedEx store that had a printer and just printed it out on a large poster board there too. What this is a different kind of, I don't even call it paper. It's sort of almost a plastic, but it's easily rollable. But I do think the fact I mean, and they did a beautiful job, the printer. I just think that it's expensive. So that's why it is we give you the file so you could just go and print it very inexpensively yourself.
Great, thank you. And
Mhm.
then someone asked, Pamela asked, what is the ideal classroom size?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm going to have two answers for that. If you can do it for 25 students or less, that's ideal. Do not do what I did 10 years ago, and I still have never forgotten it. I had an elementary school that said, we have 5 third-grade classes, and we would love to be able to offer Captain Cash to them all at one time. And I was like, sure, why not? That was such a mistake because when you offer this, you want to be upfront with the teacher saying you are going to remain involved, obviously saying it nicer than I am right now, but I need to have your involvement because you're the one who's going to be able to manage the class better than I can. And otherwise, the teachers, as what happened to me, is they found it to be a coffee break, and so I was managing 75 kids all on my own. And so learn from me. And 25 kids, make sure that you either have a teacher that's assisting or a student teacher being able to help you as well.